jumping into our next chat, we're going to be welcoming James. For everybody who's not aware, Mode just went live in the last week or so. So this is OP Stack hot off the presses. So we're really excited to have James join us in just a minute here to chat about the work that they're doing at Mode. So we've got James here, so I'll add him into the chat. But yeah, welcome James to chat about Mode and the work that you guys are doing on the OP Stack with them.
Pleasure. How's it going, everyone?
Going well. Awesome. Hand it off to you.
Perfect. So yeah, thanks for having me. I'm James. I'm the founder of Mode, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mode. I'm sure some of you have already been hacking on it, which is awesome. Yeah, we can get a little bit deeper into it today. So Mode is an OP Stack L2 designed for hypergrowth. What does that mean? That means that we're trying to design a blockchain ecosystem that directly rewards users, developers, and protocols that grow the network. Sorry, there's a typo there. It's built on OP Stack for easy application development. There's growth mechanics implemented at the protocol and product level. Going to go through that. There's network sequencer profit distribution as well through contract secured revenue, which I'm going to explain. It's been launched by a team of growth experts who have built some of the largest blockchain communities and ecosystems in the past. So let's go. So Mode is kind of founded on the principle that right now block space is very much commoditized. There is essentially a lot of block space and there isn't enough applications. There isn't enough growth in the application and user layer to fill that block space. So for the average person using a blockchain or using an L2 especially, it works quite well. Okay, fees could be lower. There are certain optimizations that should happen, but it works quite well. So the real challenge now is not in incremental tech improvements. It's in building ecosystems that have deep liquidity, clear incentives for developers and applications, and can bring applications that have product market fit and a growing user base. What we've seen at Mode is that a lot of ecosystems have launched recently. They've done a very good job of building technology, but they haven't effectively allocated resources to solve the challenges that need to help L2s and Ethereum scale. So that's what we're trying to focus on. How do we design a blockchain, an ecosystem that helps everything grow and Ethereum grow? So yeah, as mentioned, Mode's been designed by a team responsible for bringing thousands of developers and millions of users to Web3. And kind of three of the key elements of Mode, or three of the key things that we're focusing on Mode is efficient incentives, resource allocation, integrated growth tooling to scale apps, and enabling developer success. So let's dig into those. So right now, L2s are earning considerable profits. I tweeted this out, I think yesterday or the day before. We got quite a few views, quite a lot of discussion. It's the profits from July from Arbitrum, Optimism, ZK Sync. So you can see that they're all pretty profitable. The profits come from the network sequencer, which takes transactions, rolls them up, and sends them to the L1. About half of the transaction fee, maybe 60% that you pay on Arbitrum Optimism is going to the L1 gas costs, and the other half is network profit. So these profits currently go to different places. For decentralized networks, they usually go to the DAO. For projects which are backed by companies, they'll go to the company that's running the sequencer. One core principle of Mode is that we believe that sequencer fees or sequencer profits should be distributed to those who grow the network, especially the developers that grow the network. And we think they should directly be distributed, not through a DAO and not through a company. The reason is, I know a lot of people have probably applied for grants from DAOs. It can be, sometimes they work well. They're very effective at allocating resources. Sometimes governance can be slow, cumbersome. It can take a long time to get paid out or get resources to build. And then centralized companies, it's often not the best idea that, we're completely reliant on centralized companies holding large amounts of money. So let's dig into contract secured revenue. So contract secured revenue enables Mode to share profits with developers. Developers that build on Mode will earn a proportion of transaction fees from the contracts they deploy. And this is done via a CSR module, which we based on Canto's designs. Canto was the first blockchain to really take contract secure revenue seriously, with the founder, Scott Lewis, as like the inventor of contract secure revenue. We think it's awesome. And we want sequence of profits to go straight to developers. And the percentage of sequence of profits that will go to developers is going to be decided by the Mode Growth Council, which is a type of delegated governance council. Sequence of profits that devs get will be paid in ETH. They'll be claimable each week. And we're experimenting with different ways for developers to be able to claim sequence of profits. One of them is by holding NFTs and basically assigning contracts as NFTs. There's a few other things we're playing around with. But this is going to launch on Mainnet. And the real reason why we believe contract secure revenue is going to be an awesome innovation for the blockchain Ethereum L2 ecosystem is that it makes building predictable. If you have, if you deploy an application, you have 100 users and you earn $100, that's great because you know that if you can scale your application 10x or 100x, you earn 10 times or 100 times more profit from the sequencer. So that's kind of cool. And that enables developers to make forward-thinking decisions, enables them to invest more. And that's where we think it's going to be a nice feedback loop for developers building on Mode. So yeah, at the end of the day, developers will get directly rewarded for growing the network on Mode. Another key thing we're looking at is how can we have an integrated growth tooling suite to scale applications. So in Web 2, it's become pretty common that developers will deploy to certain ecosystems, certain platforms, and they'll have like a suite of tools. So when you deploy like, an app to the Apple Store, there are like hundreds and hundreds of really great tools you can integrate to get insights. For example, you can plug in advertising through Facebook and you can do direct app downloads and you can get your first 10,000 app downloads pretty quickly. You can use HubSpot for sales, you can use Google Analytics. There's loads of stuff that enables developers to scale their applications very quickly. And we want to try and take that approach with Mode. So over the last, say 12 months, let's say, 2 years, 12 months, there have been a load of apps that have basically emerged that help projects grow. So you can't really see the slide. I think it might be quite small, but there's Spindle, there's Guild, there's 3RM, there's Galaxy, there's Addressable. These are all apps or like plugins, tools, services that applications can use to help grow. So for example, Spindle is a Web3 analytics tool. It helps developers understand their users and attribute certain actions to wallets. So you might run a campaign on Twitter. You can see that a load of people, if you're using Spindle, you can see that a load of people have come from that Twitter campaign and deposited or started trading on your exchange. You're probably going to do more Twitter stuff. Galaxy helps you scale communities. Guild is an awesome tool to essentially help like reward communities for certain actions. And Addressable is a Web3 advertising tool that helps you advertise to people that have wallets. So the example and like what we're kind of basing our platform strategy on is Shopify. So Shopify was awesome, but it wasn't the most awesome store builder. It was pretty good, but there were other better options. And it also wasn't the first, but Shopify really focused on how to build a platform for people to grow their store. It was bringing in a lot of different services, applications that helped stores grow and kind of do all the manual back office stuff into their platform via their own app store. And yeah, it was really impressive at just building a platform for shop owners to become successful entrepreneurs, with many of those entrepreneurs going on to build businesses which IPO. And essentially that's the goal of any blockchain, is to have successful applications on it that will scale and yeah, maybe become bigger than the blockchain itself, or at least via user numbers start to really grow. Next slide. So yeah, part of that platform approach is to enable developer success. And yeah, for Mode, this means we want every developer who builds a Mode to succeed. Recurring revenue from contract secure revenue is a part of that. We want every developer to be paid proportionally to how much they grow the network. We're going to have this developer dashboard, which should help all developers understand more about their applications and about their users. We're going to be giving away grants from 10,000 to 100,000 for marketing and growth support. And we want to support projects that launch on Mode and also want to launch across the Superchain ecosystem. So we're happy to support anyone if you plan to launch on Mode and everywhere else as well. So currently we are in public testnet. We'll be in public testnet for probably 4 to 6 more weeks. And we're early, so there's lots of opportunity. We've built some projects internally ourselves, Bridge MM. We're working on the dashboard, the referral network, the contract secure revenue module. Projects we're looking to support include bridges, DEXs with like cool kind of innovations, AMM style DEXs especially, lending protocols, some experimental DeFi stuff, marketplaces for NFTs, NFTFi. I think that's how it's spelled. It's like NFT DeFi stuff. I think that's really cool. We really like that as a team. On-chain games and other fun stuff like AI. We want to really help anyone who has cool ideas and maybe is really talented but doesn't know how to get those ideas out into the world. That's what we're here to do. Like, we're here to help you get your first 100,000 and more users and grow your project across L2s and across Ethereum. So here's a little bit about Mode governance. This is, I think, fairly different from what other projects are focused on. We're trying to minimize governance as much as possible through the Mode DAO, and the DAO will really focus on a few things, and a couple of those are around, well, a couple of the most important are around the parameters on how much revenue goes to users who refer others to grow the network, and how much sequencer fee revenue goes to smart contract developers. That's pretty much, Mode. And it would be cool to, answer some questions. So let's jump into some questions. I'm happy to answer them from the chat here. Or maybe someone wants to jump in.
Hey, James.
How you doing, Kartik?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for that overview. I think I'm really interested to see a lot of these types of incentives kind of being given out and tried on the OP stack. So thanks for kind of covering this. We have one question from the audience, already. There's a couple, I think, coming in. But to everybody on the live stream, if you have any questions, just come out in the chat and I'll be able to relay them and ask those questions to James directly. I'm going to start off with like the one we've already received as we were giving the intro, which is one kind of common criticism we've seen here is effectively trying to understand, like, how does this mean, what does this mean for developers and how they should think about deploying contracts? Because in a way, this creates an incentive for you to not write gas efficient code. And is that at odds? How do you kind of square that? How do you think about that? And so making sure that people are writing good code and not treating blockchains as databases.
Yeah, so I think, like, obviously every chain is competitive, right? So if you write if there are two people building the same product and one has higher gas fees than the other one, people are probably going to use the one with lower gas fees. So I think in theory, it's a problem, but in reality, if you're building an exchange, if you have like contracts aren't optimized, then someone else is going to build the same exchange with contracts that are optimized, and people are going to use that. So I'm not sure how many contracts that haven't been optimized for gas have been successful. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that's fair. But I think, I guess we're also talking about like a difference of like maybe one magnitude, right? Like somebody might pay with a hyper optimized transaction that costs a tenth of a cent, but you can also write an efficient version that costs like 1 cent. And to somebody in the US, that may not make a difference, but it could mean a significant portion of someone's spending power if you're in a world that does not rely on US denominated currency. So the question becomes, well, yes, if this was a mainnet deployment, of course, you can notice that dollar value difference in transaction fees, but at the same time, on L2 transactions, you already have like a 10 to 100x improvement, but it could be that, or it could be 10,000 or 1,000x improvements. And I think the question is kind of interesting, but any other comments we can go into that? If not, I'll ask another one.
Yeah, I do think it's super interesting. And yeah, I think, should it make you optimize your contracts to make them competitive? Yes. Should it make you spend a considerable amount of time to make them completely optimized? Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, fair. One other question we have is, as Mode, how are you thinking about making it easy for developers to understand what this contract secure revenue here is? Like, does that mean there's going to be additional libraries or ways to query this directly on chain, or manage or see examples of what a good practice is? How should somebody get a good understanding of what this means?
Yeah, so we're building out a developer dashboard right now. And that dashboard will give you an insight into the contracts you deploy, the transaction fees that run through, and the percent of profits that you'll receive through contract secured revenue. So Canto originally came up with an idea to have an NFT. You can mint an NFT, you can assign contracts to it. And then that NFT is actually transferable. So you could, in theory, sell that NFT.
Is talking about Canto, or talking about this is also true for Mode?
Talking about Canto, but we're playing around with some similar designs right now. We're thinking of making the NFT non-transferable. And yeah, you'll be able to assign some contracts to that. You can, I don't know, decide to donate that ETH. Right. We're trying to make it flexible, but it'll be very visible for developers through an interface.
Oh, that's super cool. What happens in a world where somebody loses access to their keys, or if some contracts are not upgradable, you want to destroy the private key that has the ability to upgrade or redeploy? And how do you kind of think about, or I guess, what is a good way of developer to think about these things?
Yeah, I think the best way is that you'll be able to assign new contracts to an address. So if you have to upgrade a contract, you can reassign it if it needs to be reassigned. But yeah, your address should, your main address you're using, should hold an NFT, which will be where the contract secure revenue will go. So you have to obviously keep that extremely safe. That's how to think about it right now.
Awesome. I don't think there's any other questions coming in that are not easily lookable on your DOS page, so I'll leave it at that. But other than that, I mean, if there's anything else that you have, like, I can just maybe think of like one or two questions that I'm curious about. It's just overall, like, what made you get excited about this as an idea? Like, what was your motivation to do this, and especially do this thing on the OP stack?
Yeah. So I've been working in the space for around 5 years. I originally was just angel investing. and spent a lot of time building growth tools, and spent the last 2 years working for the largest growth marketing agency called Hype. And during that time, I worked with a lot of big ecosystems, including like BNB Chain, Algorand, Affinity, Flow, Polygon, and quite a few others. And yeah, I saw like a lot of great things happen when it comes to resource allocation. And I saw some, difficulties with DAOs. And as, for a developer, I think the most important thing is that you can have predictable revenue. It doesn't have to be a lot, but you want to know when you do something, you're going to get rewarded. And I really like that contract secured revenue gives you some predictability. I previously had a company, we ran advertising, and you spend money and you see what your return on ad spend is, and you decide to scale up or cut it. Right. And that's quite hard to do when you're a developer in Web3, because you have to put a lot of effort in up front, and the reward can be very variable. Maybe deploy an application that goes crazy, or maybe deploy an application that gets like a huge grant in 3 months or 6 months, or maybe nothing happens. But the idea is that contract secure revenue, you can start to deploy some maybe lightweight applications. So, okay, I've earned like $100, I've earned $500, and see if that can help you kind of bootstrap and grow. So it's just an alternative funding model. I really like the OP stack because I think it's very much aligned with Ethereum's values. And I like that the community around it is, super focused on how to scale Ethereum. Building with OP stack is also fairly straightforward. Like, I would say I'm semi-technical.
Let's dig into that, because this whole thing is about building an OP stack. The hackathon, today's summit, and understanding kind of how you can effectively think about creating your own universe that's still consistent with the other universes. When did you kind of get this idea to build this thing? When did you kind of make the decision to make it on the OP stack? And kind of from a timeline standpoint, like how easy was it to kind of get started or see that all of your requirements are going to be met? And kind of curious on that. And then I have a couple of questions about the launch process itself too from the last one.
Yeah, awesome. So I started to get interested. I've been like watching Optimism for a long time. I was an investor in Synthetics in Haven, and they were, I think, one of the first contracts to deploy to Optimism. Yeah. So it was really cool to see how they kind of were really bullish on the ecosystem really early on. And yeah, when the OP stack was kind of announced, I was really interested to see how it would work. Then I think in March, we started to hear about Base that was going to deploy. That was really interesting, looked into it, and yeah, it just kind of made sense amongst a lot of other solutions because it's production ready, which not many other kind of L2 rollup scaling solutions are right now. And I see this as a good window of time to launch a project because the market is fairly steady, and there's not as much noise as there was like a year and a half ago. So I think it's quite a nice time to launch and focus on, growing a good community and ecosystem.
Right. So, what was the most challenging piece of launching in the OP stack, and any pointers for others who are thinking about the same that they can either save time on or avoid some mistakes, or any advice?
I think that you have to figure out a lot of what you're doing by yourself. So there's lots of good documentation. There's a good community, but I still think you do need to really just figure out by yourself. Building stuff through trial and error. We're pretty early in our journey, so we haven't had too many like big hiccups. I expect there will be when we launch Mainnet. But yeah, we have a good team. So yeah.
Are some of these things obvious things that we can just complain to fix the doc blog, or is it more about how do you think about structuring something long term, or that maybe for adding CSR here you have to think about making deeper engineering changes to how the stack is structured, and that was an easier obvious compared to someone else's requirement just launching a chain?
Yeah, I think if you're going to run the Mainnet OP stack configuration, then it's very straightforward. It's more an infrastructure challenge to make sure that if you get high throughput on the chain, like how RPCs, how's everything supporting that? And yeah, we're working on that right now. We have a good partner for that, our conduit, so that's great. I think that we've had some challenges with like deploying Foundry, but I think that's been fixed. So if anyone's trying to do that, you can do that now. Yeah, that's kind of the biggest issues we've had so far.
Amazing. We also asked you one last question from the audience coming in. Can you apply renting or multi-sig EIP protocols or proposals, and or kind of have you evaluated that, or did you end up coming up with a new standard for how Mode is incorporating these things?
We haven't come up with a new standard yet, so yeah, we'll run on EIPs.
Oh, okay, got it. And maybe I'll ask this same question to the person who asked this question. What's the EIP that you're referring to, Quaison, and we'll make sure that it's the same one or like a different one. And kind of could be curious to get your comments too. But that's the thing. Is it just an implementation of an existing EIP and then kind of changes, or are you also the proposers of this EIP?
Oh, for contract secure revenue?
Yes.
Yeah, we do plan to build it out and propose it as an EIP, but initially we're going to test it ourselves for a little while. And yeah, we are say 2 to 3 weeks away from deploying it on the testnet for people to start to see within the dashboard that working and start to be able to assign contracts for contract secured revenue. So yeah, we'll definitely try and push it through, but it can be added as a module. It doesn't necessarily need to be like a protocol upgrade initially.
Sorry, could you explain that? I'm not sure I follow the standard.
It won't affect like it won't have to go into the OP stack mainnet configuration. It will run as a module like separately.
Oh, got it. Okay. And you have the flexibility to do that? I actually did not realize.
We should have the flexibility as it comes through the fees come off the sequencer, which is a centralized part of the stack. So,
but that's on the settlements and the sequencing to mainnet, but that's not controlled by the Mode chain. Is that correct?
The revenue will come through by to Mode,
but from the or not as it's being sequenced. So this is a post sequence, and then you have the ability to claim it. Is that correct? Or is it
exactly.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that a lot of things because you have a pod at the end of the day that you have a lot of claims on, and then people are able to kind of manage what this would look like, and you have to change the actual code base to incorporate this, which I think I'm 100% sure Canto had to do. So it added a bit more engineering complexity.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, James, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through a lot more specifics of how you get excited about building Mode and kind of what it means for somebody to consider building the OP stack. But it's just super cool, and hopefully we'll see a lot of people kind of test it out and break and suggest a lot of good things over the course of the hackathon and get you all ready for mainnet.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate being able to speak in front of everyone. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.